Hi everyone, thank you all for joining us here today. It's the Times Higher Education and Coursera roundtable discussion entitled Creating International Hubs for Teaching and Research, Digital Transformation in Malaysian Universities. My name is Alistair Lawrence and I'm the Special Projects Editor at THE. I'll be chairing the discussion. When we talk about digital transformation, Malaysia is a particularly interesting case, I think, partly because of COVID-related issues, such as the sudden closure of the university campuses in early October, but also because of the international recognition that Malaysia received earlier this year as a positive example of how to move courses online quickly and limit the number of coronavirus infections. So today we're looking forward to discussing case studies and best practices around how to deal with both the short-term challenges of digital transformation and how Malaysia can leverage its global standing during a difficult period in order to benefit its higher education sector. What I'd like to probably start is just to go around the room and ask everyone to introduce themselves if they can. I see, perhaps Perry, we could start with you when I can see you there. If you can just tell me, if you just introduce your name and your job title to the group and also tell us your institution, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure. Well, good afternoon to those of you in Malaysia, Singapore. Good morning to those of you in the UK, or good evening if you're anywhere else in the world. My name is Professor Perry Hobson. I'm the Pro Vice Chancellor for Engagement here at Sunway University in KL.
Thank you very much. Rafina, can we come to you next, please?
Hello, I'm Yasmin from University of Malaya, and I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor, Industry and Community Engagement.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry if I mispronounced this. Is it Fayed, sir?
Hello everyone, I'm Faiz Abdul Rahman, currently the Vice President in charge of R&D and commercialization from University Tunku Abdul Rahman, Malaysia.
Thank you very much. And Ahmed?
Good day. Thank you, Lawrence. This is Ahmad from University of Malaysia, Terengganu, the Director of International Center.
Thank you very much. And Mohammed, I'm sorry, I don't know if we can see you on your webcam at the moment. I don't think it's pointing towards you. If you can turn it around so we can keep that, would be great.
I'm trying to change the camera direction so that it points to me because I have a camera, right? Just get it on, I'll see what I can do.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Rosia, if we come to you next, please.
Sure, I'm Rosia Muhammad Jaino. I'm from UITM. I'm currently the Assistant Vice Chancellor of Quality. I'm in charge of quality assurance of the faculty of the whole system.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Great. Mohammed, we have you. Great. If you can just give us a quick intro, that'd be perfect. Thanks.
Great. You want me to? Okay, my name is Muhammad Ibrahim Abdul Muttalib. I am currently the Vice Chancellor of University Technology Petronas. So I guess I got this invitation to join this discussion. So I'm glad to join in.
Great, thank you all very much. Right. So I think we've all circulated the points of discussion beforehand, and really what we tried to do with the roundtables at Times Higher Education is have as much of a free-flowing conversation as we can. So if there's anything that any of your peers raised during the discussion that you think is particularly interesting or you'd like to know more about, by all means, just I think you can sort of raise your hand icon in Zoom if you want to get my attention, but you can also feel free to ask each other questions as we go through. So,
Alistair, I'm happy to introduce myself as well.
Sorry, Raghav. I know, Raghav, that's why I skipped over it. Sorry, Raghav, please go ahead.
No worries at all. So my name is Raghav Gupta. I'm Managing Director of Coursera for India and Asia Pacific. I'm based out of New Delhi, and great to be meeting everybody today.
Yeah, sorry. One thing I wanted is obviously Coursera partnering with THE for this for this roundtable, and Raghav will give us a short presentation about some of the data and findings as we go through. But we'll start off by I think just sort of highlighting the sort of the current climate during COVID-19 and how it's affecting the sector in Malaysia. And one thing I wanted to start with was talking about upgrading universities' physical estates to complement their digital transformations, because I imagine this is quite a challenge at the moment with the campus closures coming into effect quite suddenly about a month ago. And I would just really like to hear I would like to hear your thoughts and feedback on what the balancing act now is when you're talking about blended learning in Malaysia, because everything shifted to online quite rapidly and initially it was very successful. But now you have the ongoing concern of how to manage your campuses versus your digital offering as well. Harry, perhaps we come to you first just to ask us what the Division of Labour is and how you're managing the curricula this year.
Oh, well, there's a big one, right. Well, as many of my colleagues would know here in Malaysia, it's been a challenging year. I guess we were a little bit lucky as we started the year because as COVID hit, we were about to start our semester. We hadn't started, whereas many other universities had. And that gave us a little bit of a fire break, to be honest. We had about 2 weeks up our sleeve to pull ourselves together to really go online very, very quickly. So in terms of our balance, like many of my colleagues here, we've had to shift very quickly into an online experience from a university that was very much focused on face-to-face. As a private, not-for-profit institution, particularly I think our students, parents, families, etc., have a very high expectation of face-to-face teaching. So it was a big learning curve to go through. And I think for all of us here, it's been quite a challenge making that adjustment. Now, the campus, I'll just change my little background there so you can get a bit of an idea what I'm talking about. It sits in a suburb of KL. And so the main campus building is this 14-story building that's now behind me. Interestingly, right across the road, we are in the process of building a new building, which will be 9 or 10 stories high. And the question now in our minds is, what should we put in that building? Our original floor plans had many large lecture theatres of 400-500 seats. Now, we've laid the foundations for the building. Our challenge now is, do we really need all those lecture theatres of 400-500 seats? And so we're having a very quick rethink because after all, once you've poured a lot of concrete, it's very hard to sort of change it. And so I think this has really focused our minds and attention on that balance between the digital and the experiential, if I can put it, on the campus. And going forward, what do we want to do with that? Now, conveniently, some way, because it sits, in a city environment, and at the back of the campus, you walk into a theme park, shopping mall, hospitals, it's all connected up. And we have Monash University across the road. You're in a very different sort of learning space, if I can put it that way, in an urban environment. So going forward, these are very active conversations in our mind at the moment about how we get that balance going forward.
Okay, thank you. Mohammed, can I come to you next, please? If you can tell us how what are the discussions you're having about how to manage your physical estates as the requirement is increasingly that universities deliver their curricula online?
Okay, thanks, Alistair. You see, what happened is, in our case, we have a beautiful campus, and as I think a lot of university would like to be, in the sense that the campus environment plays part and parcel of the students, the student living, in order to sort of develop them, in addition to what we do for the academics. Now, of course, we can no longer depend on doing that because now I think only about hardly 20% of our students is on campus at the moment because they have to follow through a certain project work, but there's no face-to-face kind of thing, so we have to depend on a lot on this online. But in a way, we were quite lucky in the sense that before COVID appears, actually there was a deliberate move to actually try to bring on board more of this so-called element online teaching and learning. To actually, the idea is to supplement or back the traditional approach of doing the teaching. So we have invested quite a bit on our systems in terms of doing the online teaching and learning, and also the kind of the classroom arrangement. So we wanted to sort of embark on more of this active learning, collaborative learning, problem-based learning. So we have also invested in training our staff, training our staff, and try to get them to create that kind of environment. So in a way, when we got hit, yes, I must admit, we were taken back, and at the point when it happened, we were actually in the middle of our semester. So we've got to really do that adjustment within a week. Yeah, within a week, we've got to do that adjustment. And fortunately, we have sort of a platform which allows us to go quickly on that, MS Team. And then later we'll introduce BBB as we go along in order to provide a better sort of platform to do the online teaching and learning. And our staff, given that they have already been partly trained as well in terms of how to conduct the lecture from more from the perspective of doing an active learning rather than doing the so-called traditional lecture. So we somehow managed to sort of move into that transition, not to say smoothly, but can do. We do have students complaining, but we managed to move along. Of course, we have then to manage how do we do the assessment, and in terms of managing our infrastructure, of course, we are losing in terms of the ability of using our on-campus facilities in the past to help to build the students in terms of developing them. But that is something that we have to face. And in fact, to a certain extent, I must also admit that it kind of hit our bottom line, hit our revenue, because suddenly all these facilities become idle. You can't make use of that. But this is something that going forward we are planning, and we are hoping that by next year, once the government are able to sort of flatten up the curve, then we will be able to go back to the plan where we'll start bringing back the student on board to get the experience. So that is kind of the situation that we are managing and handling now.
Thank you. Yeah, certainly a lot's changing at a very quick pace of time. Faz, if I come to you and ask you how that adjustment's looking at University Tunku Abdul Rahman, and how are you considering, how is it changing the way that you are thinking about using the physical space on campus?
Thank you, Alistair. So we are no different with my other colleagues in other universities. We face a lot of challenges, especially during the early stage of MCO, where we are only given, I think, 2 or 3 days to adjust ourselves. And we are also in the middle of our trimester. So that really put a strain on us, especially our lecturers, because I have to admit, our lecturers are not trained to give lectures online. And it is not the same as face-to-face. Okay? So there's a lot of challenges, and fortunately, our staff or academics adapted well, and they use whatever platform that we currently have, especially MS Teams. We fully use MS Teams, and also our students, because our students, most of them are in the B40, so they will always have problems in terms of to have their own gadgets and whatnot. So we have been working closely with the companies like Celcom, Yes, DG, all these utilities to give us a special rate for our students. So we also have working with companies which sells computers, laptops. Also, we work with them closely to give special rate to our students. We also have, because of our students which are all in B40, we also have a special loan for them. We give out special loans for them, immediate loan for them to buy gadgets and whatnot to help them in terms of their studies. Okay, so in terms of operation, obviously it will really affect our bottom line, because most of our new students, they are deferring their enrollment, because they would like to wait for the current situation to maybe subside. So you will see a lot of deferment of registration. So maybe they will come back next year. So that will also affect our bottom line. But what we did was we relooked at our budget, our operation budget, and readjusted so that it does not affect us much. Okay, so there's a lot of things that we learned during this pandemic, and we are now in the third trimester already. So we started in the middle of a trimester, then our May trimester. Now we have started our third trimester. So our staff have adapted to the situation, and hopefully whatever we deliver to our students will benefit them. And also our students, hopefully by now, they will have all the necessary gadget and also the infrastructure for them to receive this online education. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Rosie, if I could come to you next, perhaps you could tell us what are the key things that you've learned during this period, and how and what you are prioritizing in terms of teaching students online, but also allowing for the fact that you will be allowed back on campus at some point.
Great. Thank you, Alistair, for the opportunity. So our university is no different than the other universities, except for our university. Our university is mostly focused on the marine research and also teachings. I cannot imagine how a marine university which cannot have access to waters. So which is something that very problematic for us at the start. And then what we did was for research students, we tried to have partner universities to be our co-supervisors for the students, so they can give our international students a lab for them to work on their research. For the undergrad students, we have to measure their psychomotor and also affective. For online courses, we can measure their knowledge, the case, right? However, for the affective and psychomotor, this is something that we need to compensate while working online. So therefore, what we did for the undergrad students is to move from psychomotor to pseudo-psychomotor. It's like when you are dealing with lab experiments, we try to demonstrate all those experience that they can get from the lab experiments through online setup. For, I think, biological lecturers, they try to use a lot of online-based experiments just to give them an experience on what they can do in the lab, however, through online experience. And we also need to focus on the affective measurement, because we cannot give emphasis on the psychomotor anymore that much. So we need to rebalance in terms of percentage of assessment for the students. And one thing that I think what we observe from this MCO, because we don't have students in the campus, and most of the facilities are not being used. So we see the lower bills in terms of electrical bills. However, we need to reallocate to help the students in the online access. So I think similar to what Faiz have said just now, some of the allocation has been sent to other resources that we can use to help the students in terms of bills and things like that. And I think I need to mention, I would like to thank Coursera for the free courses, because I think most of the universities are using Coursera a lot these days to compensate for the online learning, especially during the first 3 months of MCO. Lots of courses that help the students, especially on our school is the engineering and informatics. So we use Coursera a lot. And I think this is very challenging times, and we try to compensate as much as possible, try to reallocate as much as possible, mostly on the percentage on the markings, helping the lecturers. We are very lucky because these last 2 years, we emphasize a lot on the online learning. So we use a lot of our e-learning facilities, try to make sure that at least during the early times, the lecturers are ready with the blended learning percentage. And we penalize lecturers who don't have that blended learning marks. So now, since we practiced that for the last 2 years, for this COVID situation, they have a very smooth transition to the online teaching. So that's what have been discussed and implemented in our university.
Okay, great, thanks. I mean, I'm sure Raghav will be very happy to hear that Coursera is proving useful during this period for you. Rosia and Yasmin, I wonder if I can come to you. Is there how are the setup of degrees changing and going forward? Like, is there a fundamental shift now in terms of the way that you are teaching students online that you don't think will revert entirely back to how it was, even if all the restrictions were lifted tomorrow?
Well, from UITM point of view, I don't think we'll go back totally to what we were before. As you know, maybe you don't know yet, let me explain to you, Lawrence. UITM is the largest university, public university in Malaysia. We have 164,000 students, for that matter, even though 60% of them are actually diploma student, but then we still have more than half, 100,000 students from degree and above, degree, masters and PhD. We have a tough time actually adjusting to this COVID, but luckily we have a well planned in such a way that, to tell you the truth, our university just launched our strategic planning for 2025, right before COVID. And then suddenly this thing came, and we really have to adjust, Lawrence. And to that extent, in fact, all you mentioned about physical, right? So everything is really being revamped. Now that we have to, all meetings with all the campuses are done online. So our Senate also done in online. So we still maintain every month we do have Senate, because the university of this size, we cannot actually just let go those. I mean, even though we have autonomous in that sense, but still the Vice Chancellor need to know what's happening out there, right? Because locality wise, from one campus to another is actually very the distance. Now I think that the even the top management realized the importance of shifting to this online thing. At least we save costs. In terms of before this, we got to travel. Top management got to travel to other campuses and meet with them. Now that we can use this online, I think in one way that will be a blessing in disguise for us, for UITM. But when you mentioned about physical earlier on, of course, our campus are now very quiet, silent, not much activity. And during our executive meeting, we do our top management do discuss about what need to be done. So I think they already have something in the pipeline. So what need to be done with these classes that are actually empty. But for us, our Senate already decided that there will be, even the government not allowed the student to come in right until end of the year, but we are preparing to allow at least our postgraduate students to come in right at the end of the semester, maybe around January, or prior to slightly before January, so that they can come in and do some practical work. But bear in mind, those postgraduate students who have to do their research, they are allowed. So we are requesting from the government to allow them to come and continue the research. That's what our Senate is actually doing for the moment. That's about it, Lawrence.
No, that's quite, I didn't know. No, I think I did read an article. It was actually in THE over the summer, talking about Malaysia and how initially it had been the final year students and postgraduate students who had been allowed on campus during a slightly less strict lockdown. But the new measures that were brought in at the beginning of October were a much it was much harsher lockdown, and it made it much more difficult to work on campus. Yasmin, if I could come to you just to find out a little bit about what the challenges are around managing the physical space at your institution and how the shift to online is. I think we've come over a couple of things here. Obviously, it makes teaching some courses very difficult, but also perhaps there are some opportunities to manage things a bit more effectively and also reach students directly by teaching them online. Oh, sorry, Yasmin, you're on mute.
There's always a silver lining behind every cloud, right? As you said. So just like UTP and most other universities, we were already into the mode of having hybrid, flipped classroom, a presence of online learning for all our courses. And coincidentally, my own program, we were in the middle of what we call online week. We have weeks where we go online 100%, just sort of to test the system. So I was quite comfortable during the changeover because my course was being fully online that week. Having said that, I think we're not too worried about our digital infrastructure in since I think we've been well prepared for a full online program. Our issue is really twofold. One, of course, maintaining an online program is not the same as teaching in a dual mode or hybrid, and we really don't want this situation to last that long. Having said that, it's really made us think again about the quality of how we present our programs and our courses online, actually. So before that, it was just to fulfill a requirement. I think most lecturers, will know how to do a video or get on FB Live or something. But now we're talking more about real digital infrastructure in terms of the quality of teaching material. We realized that there are not enough content designers working with academia in Malaysia. So the quality of and maybe the innovativeness of the way we teach could be really improved. And I think this is one of the initiatives that management is starting to take, is to try and look at that kind of added value to how we can prepare better online content should we have to carry on with online learning. And I think it's a given now that we are quite comfortable with doing a hybrid, even when we all come back to campus. But there's nothing, of course, that beats the campus experience. I mean, we miss programs like mobility for our students and stuff like that. But our pain points during this period is the same as other public universities. It's really not so much the digital infrastructure on campus, but it's really, number one, getting our students who are not on campus having access. Just like the other universities, more than 60% of our students are B40 students. We've had to work very hard to be able to fund programs that will enable them to get connectivity. And then in the second one, to have really creative content that keeps students engaged for long periods of time. That, I think, is something that, merits a lot of maybe discussion and maybe collaboration with other partners to see how we can exchange really more innovative ways of keeping students engaged and being able to teach more technical programs online with virtual reality or with simulations of laboratories and things like that. Simple online lectures, we're okay with that. But moving forward, if we're going to be constantly having to readjust to an online platform, we'd love to be able to look at more innovative ways, and we'd like to partner with others who want to develop this kind of content. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, I think that's one of the common threads we've had. We've had this discussion with academics in all different countries at THE over the past 6 months, and that obviously your staff need time and space in order to work, in order to manage their workload, in order to learn the new skills that they need for teaching and learning online. But as we look to the medium and long term, there's a tremendous opportunity to enable more academic freedom for talented teachers to start to use new tools and teach students in new ways. Raghav, that's probably quite a good point to come to you, if that's okay. I mean, I know you have some insights to share about this, particularly around the trends that Coursera has observed over the past 6 months. And for those of you, some of you are working with Coursera already, but as I understand it, Coursera's had a huge onboarding of data and has almost 70 million learners on its platform now. So I think that gives us a really unique opportunity just to hear from Raghav to talk about the findings around skills and data that can perhaps tell us a bit more about what you found during this period in terms of trends.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Alistair. And it's been very interesting for me to listen to, some of the thoughts that everyone has shared. I would echo some of what has been shared, but I'd love to also provide an overview of what we are seeing in our work with higher education around the world. There's a lot of data supporting this, and I can share some of that. And I'd also love to have a discussion a little bit around, and I'm sorry, I'm going to just share my screen. Sure. Hopefully you can see this. Yeah, so I'd also love to have a little bit of a conversation around what are we seeing as what might be, the normal once we get back to a post-COVID kind of a world. You can see the screen, right? Alistair, if you could just confirm that.
Yes, I can see.
So the theme I picked was the digital transformation that we're seeing higher education go through. And if I can just start with a little bit of what we are seeing in the jobs space as well, because, in our capacity as Coursera, we work with industry quite a bit. And we're finding that, it's, of course, very important from a higher education perspective to be thinking about how industry and how jobs are changing, and how, of course, COVID is accelerating the need for technology in higher education. Now, one fundamental thing, which we've been highlighting to universities is that while, universities transition to online, while you get your new enrollments done, it is helpful and it is very important to keep in mind that jobs are impacted very significantly because of COVID. And when it comes to placement seasons, when it comes to your students appearing for interviews, it's going to be a much more challenging job environment for them. And what we're hearing from industry is there are lesser jobs, and the skills that are needed in these jobs are going to be different as well. The second thing, of course, I think we heard from everybody, many students have been impacted. UNESCO tells us upwards of 1.6 billion students in schools and colleges have been impacted. But at the same time, we've seen massive growth in online courses. And on the Coursera platform, usage has gone up by upwards of 600% compared to last year. And I'd love to talk a little bit about what does this mean. And then lastly, we are seeing also, because higher education is, in many countries tightly regulated, we are seeing the regulators starting to encourage online for credit quite a bit more. And so, for example, we've seen in India, the UGC says up to 40% of an on-campus degree can be delivered using online content from other universities. And similarly, MQA or CHED in Philippines are actively playing a much bigger role than we've seen them play in the past. Also, just at a broad macro level, like I said, understanding what's happening in industry is extremely important. And Coursera works with the World Economic Forum. We work with upwards of 2,500 companies. The professional world is undergoing massive change. And, some of the highlights of this are, firstly, massively 42% of jobs are expected to have different skill sets. And this was always the case, but it has accelerated. This was going to happen in 5-6 years. Now it's happening in 2 years. And I think a question that many universities are thinking about is, what are these new skills and how do we teach our students these new skills? And especially on technical skills, we are finding that the average shelf life, which was earlier talked about as 4 years, is reducing. And then lastly, many companies are going digital. They're investing in many softwares to digitize their businesses, but they're finding that they're not being able to fully optimize the usage of those softwares that they're putting in. And so a question that is coming up is there enough software related training, which is needed in almost any job now, that higher education can provide to students before they come into jobs? And if I were to take some of the challenges that we are finding universities are talking to us about around the world, these are probably the 5 highlights that we see. So student employability, like I spoke about, one, given job skills will change, and second, the number of jobs available will be lesser. Second, I think some of you spoke about cost management and reducing costs. There are pressures on tuition, on students' ability to pay. And I would say online has a big role to play, because obviously online can deliver cost efficiencies. Thirdly, we've seen universities looking to increase capacity with the same infrastructure. I think Perry spoke about a little bit about how they're thinking about their physical infrastructure as well. And then also faculty development, because if the skills that need to be taught to students are going to be different, then how does faculty kind of gear up for that? And then lastly, I would say the need for differentiation amongst universities is sharper, because students are stepping back and saying, should I go into higher education? Should I hold on? or will my university prepare me for jobs of the future? Now, these are some of the points that we're seeing around the world. And given some of this context, in March, we made our Coursera for Campus platform available for free to universities and colleges around the world, because we wanted to support higher education during this period. And this platform was available for free for 6 months till the end of September. I know a number of the universities that are joining us today have had their students learn on the Coursera platform. I wanted to share a little bit of what we've learned in the last 6 months. So firstly, the adoption has been massive. There were 30 universities using Coursera for Campus till February, and now there are 3,700 universities, and these are around the world that we've seen this adoption happen. And it's been 2.4 million students who've taken 21 million courses, and 70% of this learning has happened on a mobile device. Now, this has tremendous implications for higher education, going forward, and I'd love to share some of what that might mean. Now, in our work with higher education, and some of you said this, that this has been a crisis and a period of rapid change, but it has also been an opportunity to really drive rapid innovation in higher education. And let me share a little bit of how we are thinking about the next few years. So firstly, like Alistair said, many of you may already know this, Coursera is a fairly large platform. We don't create content ourselves, but we host content from leading universities and from leading companies. And today there are 72 million learners on our platform globally. The content that they take comes from 150 universities from around the world and 50 leading companies. And then as a part of our institutional work, we work with businesses, governments, and campuses. And as I mentioned, we work with 3,700 campuses today. But also very importantly, because we work with businesses, we've developed a fairly strong understanding of what the working world is looking for. So you'll see here on the slide examples of companies in banking, in financial services, in oil and gas, in retail, in technology, and so on and so forth. And many of these companies are training their employees on the Coursera platform. And because we have an understanding of what the working world needs, we're able to funnel that into bringing that to higher education as well. And please keep in mind, many of you spoke about online education. There are various types of online education. One way is your faculty member taking a live class. That's online education as well. The other way is pre-recorded classes on Coursera from a third-party university, which is being used on your campus by your students. And I'm obviously focusing on the latter. But I'd love to talk about the former as well, because we're working on making it easier for your faculty to conduct live classes. And I'll talk a little bit about that as well. The other thing that we did recently, about 3 months ago, is we released a report called the Global Skills Index. And the reason I share this here is because if universities want to understand how industry is changing, this is a great resource. It talks about how skills are changing globally, but also specifically in 60 specific countries. And we can tell you specifically in Malaysia, across 10 different industries, what are the skills of the future that industry is asking for. Just a quick highlight from that. So on the Coursera platform, across these millions of individuals and thousands of companies, there are 11 domains that you see on this slide. We find that most individuals who come on the platform are looking to learn skills which are relevant for their jobs, which are relevant for the fourth industrial revolution that we're currently going through. And these are skills in the areas of data science, business, and computer science. And we see this happening across different industries. We see this happening across students who might be studying design, but they want to also understand data. We might see this across an MBA student who also wants to understand data. And you'll find details of some of what these skills are for the fourth industrial revolution in this Global Skills Index. And we'll chat that out in case somebody would like to access this report as well. The other thing that we've been working on is the Coursera for Campus platform. And the intent of this platform is to prepare students for jobs of the future. And we built 5 pillars as a part of this platform. So firstly, of course, is content. There's content from the world's top universities and companies. And the fundamental change that we are seeing is, so far universities wanted their students to only learn from their faculty. But now we are seeing this willingness across universities to cross-share content, right? So if you're teaching an engineering student in Malaysia, can he or she also be learning from Michigan or from Imperial College in London and so on? So there's top quality content that we've put together on our platform. The second thing that we've done is to enable your faculty to author their own content. we provided Coursera's expertise and Coursera's technology for your faculty to author projects and assessments and courses. Because like many of you said, we think that the world in higher education has changed permanently, and almost every faculty member will need to be authoring content beyond just taking live classes. And it's not the same as teaching in a physical classroom. The third element has been hands-on learning. And along with knowledge, taking hands-on learning online is important. We've launched something called guided projects, and I'll show you a little bit of the response that we've seen from students. But the ability to take actually hands-on learning is critical. Job-ready skills, of course, I spoke about quite a bit. And then eventually the technology is very scalable on our platform. We're finding that universities are using this platform for these three purposes. So either for credit or not for credit. And the first one is a standalone course. So if a university says, this is a course which is relevant for my students, we currently don't teach it on our campus, let me use the Coursera platform to use a course as a standalone course. We are seeing that. Blended learning, of course, either as a flipped class or something else. So using a combination of a course on Coursera plus, their faculty to teach online. And then finally, going beyond the curriculum for multidisciplinary learning as well. And eventually our intent is that if we can partner with, and this is an example of an engineering discipline, but our intent is that if we can partner with what universities are teaching on campus to also bring a combination of university content on Coursera and also content from industry. So an engineering student learning, let's say from University of London or UC San Diego, but also learning from companies like NVIDIA or Unity and so on. And then finally taking a project which gives them hands-on learning is, we think, a powerful approach to get students ready for jobs as well as for further higher education if that's what they'd like to pursue. And just building on the engineering example, we're finding that many jobs of the future for engineering students, and this is just an example, we've done this for management and other disciplines as well, require specialization. So we're finding, for example, for a computer science student to specialize in cloud, big data, cybersecurity, and AI might be great career paths to pursue. And similarly for an electrical engineer or a mechanical engineer. And what we've done is we've taken, let's say, a specialization of a career path in artificial intelligence and said, how do we blow that up into content that a student should be taking? Now, just to show you a little bit of some of the, and I have just two or three more slides left, but some of the content that these 2.1 million students have taken on Coursera in the last 6-7 months are largely job relevant skills. And so what you're seeing here is content in Python from Michigan, content in AI from Coursera's co-founder's company, content in professional communication skills, and even Excel skills. So very job relevant content is what we see. And then you'll see that on trending skills here as well that students have been learning on our platform. As I mentioned, we launched guided projects with the intent of making a learner learn a software in a virtual machine. So this is a machine where the right-hand side is an instructor, the left-hand side is a student, and the student is learning Tableau software for data visualization. And similarly, we've created like 600 of these projects on our platform in the last 3 months. I'd love to just show you what the response from students has been. So we launched guided projects in May. And business learners, government learners on our platform have been taking guided projects. But if you look at the number here, students in campuses have taken up 1.5 million guided projects. So the value that students are deriving from hands-on learning seems to be very strong. And the guided projects that they've taken are around building a website, getting familiar with HTML, Python, project management, and so on and so forth. So there seems to be value in what students are deriving here. And then lastly, we're also conscious that along with bringing async courses on Coursera, your faculty is also teaching live, and we want to make that a more seamless process. So a few weeks ago, we partnered with Zoom and we launched something which we are calling Live to Coursera, where a faculty member, when they're teaching on Zoom, can actually click a button and that Zoom class can get recorded both on Zoom and on the Coursera platform. And if a student is unable to attend a live class, they can actually come and attend that class async. And because students also have problems with data connectivity, they have the choice to view this class by downloading it offline or doing it on a lower kind of a bandwidth, or even doing the class as audio. And this is the first thing that is, kind of coming online later this quarter. But we're also thinking about what else can we do in terms of making it easier for faculty to be able to teach online. So I think that's some of what we are seeing from around the world. I'd love to pause here, but also continue the conversation to see what some of this might be relevant and what many of the leaders who are joining us today might see value in as well. With that, I'll hand back to you, Alistair. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Raghav. That was really helpful. I just wanted to pick up on sort of 2 or 3 points from that deck. And when we talk about the new ways of learning and shaping new curricula, there were some interesting points there. One was the need, Raghav, the trend rather that Raghav cited for specialization, but also for multidisciplinary learning, and also within that the need for job skills as well. So these on the surface, I think, are 3 quite different areas in terms of, first off, they seem like very separate areas, but they're clearly all coming together, and they're coming together as we start to teach more and more online. Perry, I was wondering, in terms of what you think the change will be over the curricular structure for the long term, is the actual shape of your courses changing, and does this mean a move to, stackable credentials, smaller courses, or is it about changing a more long-term approach in terms of looking at multidisciplinary learning and teaching job skills and embedding that in existing curricula?
Well, I think the short answer to that is I think it's still pretty early days for us to work through that. And I think a lot of universities, particularly in the Malaysian context, where the majority are non-self-accrediting, will have some long conversations with their MQA. I see someone nodding there already about that. So my challenge, I suspect, with education is that our long lead times are going to be really problematic. Universities are kind of dinosaurs. We're very slow-moving beasts in the jungle. And the world has sped up, as Raghav has said, very, very quickly. We've turbocharged going into a very digital space very quickly. Now, a lot of people have been saying for some time that education was due for a disruption. We've seen many other industries very rapidly disrupted through digital, and universities had really, rallied if I could put it, the wagons to make sure they weren't too disrupted, because we put huge infrastructure into campuses and the like. So we really didn't want to see that. So I think the challenge going forward here is still going to be a mindset. Earlier this year, we, along with many other universities, were spectacularly unready for what COVID brought to us. Now, I'm a tourism academic, so, my colleagues in industry and tourism and hospitality are even worse affected than universities. So when I see people in universities saying, oh, woe is me, yesterday I was reading about Malaysia's 3rd largest airline, Malindo, which is running on 10% of its capacity. Now, no one had written a crisis management plan for that one. So universities are still doing it fairly well compared to certain other industries because we've had that ability to adapt. Now, I think we're still in this reactive phase, and that was where we went to. My colleagues didn't even have microphones and speakers on their computers in their offices 6 months ago. So we, along with everybody else I've heard speak today, has gone through, an incredible hill to climb. And I think we're still all sort of grabbing around, looking around, seeing what's available, what can be done, etc. I think we're now realizing that the world isn't going to go back to normal in a hurry. These lockdowns are going on. Listening to my colleagues, my own nephew in the UK, who's just recovered himself from COVID at York University. These have been big shocks. And I think universities are now peering over and realizing that we're not going to go back to where things were, and trying to work out that balance between what we can uniquely provide versus what I've just been hearing from Coursera, which could be provided more broadly, and some collaboration. Yesterday, I was talking at EduTech in Singapore on this issue of collaboration versus competition. And I made the point most universities compete very strongly for students and for staff. Research was much more collaborative. Interestingly, teaching, and the point that's just been made, was that, basically most universities didn't want to share their academic staff. They belonged to us because we were very competitive to recruit them. Now that we've gone online, suddenly we can start to collaborate more easily on teaching, authoring, etc., that's just been spoken about. So this is going to put universities in a new and different space. How willing are we going to be wishing to share that researcher, that teacher? And remember, it's our teachers have been sort of locked in those classrooms, in those large lecture theatres. Other people never got to see them before. Some of them will not adapt well to that virtual online environment, not at all. It's a very different skill set, I think. And I think many universities are seeing that. So to answer your question, it's very early days, I think, on working out where we're going to go with this. Clearly, as you've heard, the world is changing and universities will recognise that. But how we build will change. Malaysia's just only approved micro-credentials. So we're still getting our head around what they will look like to do that stackable type of things. But my hunch is that will come because this comeback from COVID is going to be a very stop-start affair, which I think will go well beyond 2020, 2021, 2022. The airline industry is now talking 2024. So I think we have to be realistic on the timeframes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Perry. Ahmed, can I come to you next? Just as Perry said, it is early days and it's difficult to perhaps give a definitive answer for this. But when you look at the way that courses are changing, are you thinking already now about how do we include more around specialization, around greater collaboration, around multidisciplinary learning, around embedding job skills? Are those discussions that you are having in terms of how you may change your curricula in future?
Alistair, you're looking at me?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Well, I'm looking. I've got you on a tile. Sorry, but yes, no. Go ahead. It's fine. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. I think what Perry has stated earlier. I mean, that is the situation that all universities kind of going forward, they're going to face that kind of thing. I agree with Perry in the sense that it's still early and we too are still looking at how do we go forward. Although, to a certain extent, when we move forward, I agree with, I think, was it Rofina was making a point that we will not go back to entirely traditional kind of teaching and learning because of this sudden exposure towards this online learning has actually taught the university to know that there are certain things beneficial that you could adapt in the future using this online. And there are certain things that you may need to still stay on with the face-to-face. But of course, as Perry stated earlier, it's a question of when we can really come back and start this face-to-face. Or maybe some university will do it more of a blended kind, depending on how the authority would allow us to do so. Now, on the question of actually building up the skill training, the other modules, right, which we can actually leverage on. We are thinking along that line. It's like we have a normal curriculum, right? A normal curriculum which we have developed around a certain qualifications that we're going to give to our students. But of course, it will be a good point for us to strengthen that. Our students by having them or exposed to some other things, yeah, which by virtue of having those courses available online and the such as Coursera, we're offering them, right? The manner of which it is being delivered is now getting better and better. We see that as an advantage, right? Which we would like to sort of bring on board as we go forward into the future. For time being, we can sort of blend it together with our online learning. But as we go forward later, yeah, even to the point that when we have come back to a certain extent to this face-to-face practice, it will be good for us because it's now easily accessible through online. Because in the past, it wasn't as sort of readily available per se. Yeah? So that is something that we see good. Yeah, we build it stackable onto to the curriculum that we have. I guess, Perry, in order for us to circumvent around the MQA, the authorities, I think it's best safe for us not to sort of blend them into our curriculum, but you could put them over and above, as an encouragement to our students to prepare them, while we sort of stick to to what have been the guidelines that have been approved to us by the authority. Yeah, I think that's
okay. Great. Thank you. Yeah, no, I wanted to try and avoid putting anyone on the spot in regards to policy decisions and the amount of independence that the academy perhaps wants and has in Malaysia. I think it's probably a discussion for another day. But Rosie, I saw you nodding along to a couple of points that both Perry and Mohammed made. I was wondering, how is this changing your outlook in terms of the opportunities you have for, as Mohammed says, perhaps you layer on some additional skill units about teaching skills, and perhaps there are more opportunities for you to collaborate in different ways in future. Is that the case at your institution?
Well, I would say so. When I listen to Perry and also Prof. Muhammad, I would say in UITM, that's what we are also facing that, and actually we are looking forward to encourage all our staff and academic staff to come on board. And in fact, I've tried Coursera. I've been looking at how do we go about adapting to all this situation. And of course, at our university in UITM, we do have our own system, our LMS. But I think what Coursera is having, like what Gupta mentioned earlier, was perhaps 2-3 years ahead of us, right? So we, like Perry said, we have to sort of adjust to that. Whether we can, not to say jumped in it immediately, we really have to go into it with proper planning in that sense, right? But in UITM, we do have what we call Education 5.0. We do have a planning. And at the same time, we're also looking into what MQA is actually giving us sort of a guideline. It's just that whether we can deliver it like micro-credential, but Perry mentioned about relating to MQA. They already have this guideline that they are ready to allow all universities in Malaysia to go on this micro-credential, but how true or how good it will be impacted on the students, we are not sure of that yet. In a way, we are ready perhaps to sort of do it in UITM. Prior to COVID, we already have what we call Wisdom Wednesday, so where university can really go into online, and then they can and go into all courses actually allowed to go online. That was prior to COVID, but then now it's 100% actually have to go online. We have quite tough time and trying to adjust, but as been mentioned by Perry just now, we really have to sit down and lay out how do we go about looking into this quality assurance. Because I'm the person actually in charge of this. Looking into, right. So when we do, in fact, I've already done around the audit, you see, the academic audit. Now we're doing it remote audit, and we managed to do that. But we're still concerned about the outcome. We're still concerned about whether the students really get what they're supposed to get, like what Yasmin mentioned earlier on. What matters to us is the result, right? So whether the student can sort of gain and experience the real skill, and so that they can perform out there and become a good citizen later on. So that's an issue, Asta.
Thank you. I think that was sympathetic laughter from your colleagues, and not, not.
Yes, very much so. I should.
Great. Ahmed, if I could come back to you, because I just mindful of a comment that you made at the top when you were talking about quite specialist courses and why it's become so difficult to teach some of those when you move to an online setting. when you look at perhaps the future of digital education that platforms such as Coursera kind of provide in terms of the specialization, the multidisciplinary aspects, and also the job skills that you're embedding on top of that, does that give you some kind of roadmap as to how you can perhaps plan for the future under very difficult circumstances?
Right. Thank you, Alistair, for the question. Yes, again, UMT is a marine-focused university, and you are talking about teaching cadets to be able to steer a ship. So this is very stressful for us because once the students are not in campus, so we cannot bring the students to the ship. And also, one thing that we managed to do is try to have simulators. Simulators are very expensive. It's in the campus, all right? And the students use the simulator instead of going to the physical ships. So now what we are going to do is we try to make things that are capable to be in the app form to be delivered in the app form. So anything that can be appable, so Apple, is that a word? So to be delivered in terms of app. So sorry about that. I don't know how to describe it.
No, I think we all understood this fine.
It's a great word.
All right. So yeah, that's what I think. If you're talking about the longer roadmap, I think we need to think 5 years forward. But to have subjects that can be delivered through simulators, like how to drive a ship, how to detect failures on the engine, where we can use simulators, or even the lecturers. We have lecturers that do research on how to build a 3D environment, so we can work with the lecturers. We have 2 labs that involve how to detect failures in the engines. Can you please make a 3D software using Unity to help us deliver this kind of tasks, so the students will have the lab experience through their handphones. So it's basically a firefighter situation. So we ourselves, we cannot propose a long term, but anyhow, if we manage to prove that this will going to work, so we are ready for the future, how to battle with the future. I think it's a small first principle or small Lego blocks that we are implementing right now for the sake of the future. That's what I can comment on the simulator part. However, for the diving part, it's a big problem with us because you need to be with the students to teach them how to dive. It's one of our favorite subjects as an elective. So for this semester, we cannot offer that for the students. Hopefully, when the students come, we can offer that again. But anyhow, anything that can be presented in the form of applications or apps in the phones, then we need to transform into that. Back to you,
great, thank you. Yeah, no, it sounds like a very unique challenge that you've got, but I think it underlines the growing demand for different ways of learning online. And I think it will be really interesting because already you've seen things like Lab Exchange coming out of Harvard, which I believe is a platform for trying to put more subjects online that people say, can't be done because you need to have a lab in order to do it. So I think in terms of the reporting I've seen over the past 6 months at THE, it seems to be that the Academy is really embracing this challenge as a chance to come up with new types of technology and new ways of learning. And it will probably vary a lot depending on the subject area, but already I think we're seeing some very interesting developments. Yasmin, if I could come to you on this, just so when you're looking at new forms of curricula and new ways of presenting it, as some of the other panelists have said, there are restrictions, obviously. You don't have you can't be completely free in your choices, but are there already ideas that you're having or strategies that you are planning to help students and to help staff in terms of new types of courses?
Definitely. In fact, I'm very excited to see the presentation by Coursera, and particularly on the collaboration between industry and other universities to deliver really key programs. It's very exciting. As Barry said, let's get real. To create a collaborative program with different entities, that's a big challenge. We have a few programs that we run, dual programs at undergraduate level, and that takes years to put together in terms of accreditation. But the micro-credentialing and the stacking of courses for students as an additional value add to the curriculum is something we look at as well quite seriously. I mean, we've partnered with some private with some industries to provide some credential courses to our students to value add to their program, which is not within our curriculum. But it's actually well accepted by students because these are professional credentials that can be stacked. But then it has, in the current situation, it's outside the curriculum, unfortunately. It's more of an added value. But I think in the future, we certainly want to move towards doing collaborative programs in very specific skill sets. As you showed in your slides, to bring the best of industry, the best of universities together, and that's what we did successfully for some master's programs, some graduate school programs. So the graduate programs, I think, maybe is where at entry level we can build this kind of program, because it's not subject as much to the rigorousness of the undergraduate programs in terms of accreditation. Correct me if I'm wrong, MQA. So it's a direction we're taking. We're looking very much at collaboration with industry to provide us some of the skill sets, and a lot of this can be done remotely, digitally, I think, with the current platforms that I've seen. So yeah, I think we have to plan, like the Tamat said, we have to plan for the future, because this is how future collaborations can make the world smaller using a digital platform and have more access to technology for more students. I mean, it's really the way forward. I think we're just limited by our imagination and how we build the platforms. I mean, the Lab Exchange is a wonderful platform, actually. So, we need to invest in that kind of infrastructure. But yeah. So we're very open to that. But we suggest that maybe we explore graduate programs first to look at collaborative delivery of some of these programs for specific skill sets, or else it has to be an add-on stack. To embed in curriculum, that will take time. It has to take a lot of structural changes with how we are looking. There are many proponents of liberal education, the liberal arts education in our universities. But that flexible education. This morning I was on a panel actually at EduTech Asia as well on competence-based education. And all that requires a much more flexible structure, which we don't have right now. So competence-based education, where people can pick and choose and stack up their programs. I mean, it's like it's kind of a student's dream, but practically we are not there yet. I mean, I think we're quite far away from being able to do that. But there are proponents of it, and we are trying to. I think there's movement even in UM to sort of kickstart one model program of a liberal arts style program that may be the start of being able to do more collaborative models. So we'll see. Planning for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not an easy job, but we've got about 5 minutes left. Faiza, I was just wondering if I could come to you to just to get your perspective on this and how things are working at University Tunku Abdul Rahman, because to Yasmin's point, is adding value by teaching, sort of embedding or laying on, job-related skills. Does that perhaps a first step in making degree programs more attractive to students and making them more making them useful? I think there was another interesting point that Yasmin raised about the world is getting smaller again because of this, and so there is perhaps more international competition for students now. But there's also the great chance of more international collaboration, where working with employers is maybe another part of that. So, do you think that sort of the laying on jobs, job relevant skills, or just skills education in general, is a step in the right direction? And do you think it's the logical next step for many degree programs?
I think moving forward, I think job skill related courses are important because to students that is the most important thing. So once they graduate, they need to know that jobs are secure for them. Okay, that is the purpose why they go for higher education. I think we are going towards the right direction, but we should not forget that the social skill is also important. So we should not forget about the social skill, not just the technical, but also the social skill, which is important when they deal with people of various background and whatnot. So how do we do this in the current situation where we have COVID? I'm not sure how long this COVID will last. In terms of technical skill, maybe we can use Coursera and whatnot to deliver the skills. But what about the social skills? So we should not forget about the social skill, which is also equally important to me. If you have the technical skill, but you don't have the social skill, so it is quite difficult for you to perform your work. So moving forward, we have to plan about the technical skills, but we also have to think of how our students can have the sufficient social skill for them to adapt to the working environment.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, on the job relevant and the micro credential point that I think has come up a few times, if I may add a couple of quick points.
Please do, yes.
Yeah. So I think what we are seeing on the job relevant credential, which might be interesting to share. We've been working with companies like IBM and Google and Facebook to bring some of their content onto the Coursera platform. And what we're finding is that, let's say there's an MBA student who wants to go and work in digital marketing. And if to this MBA student, we can bring a certificate, which is a program on social media marketing from Facebook, then the student is seeing a lot of value in that because they're getting an MBA on campus, but they're also getting a micro credential from Facebook because they want to go and work in social media marketing. And similarly, if the student wants to go and get a job in sales and marketing, we've partnered with a sales force to say, come and take this certificate on sales, and it comes from Salesforce. And, similarly for Google and IT and IBM in data science and so on and so forth. And I think some universities are now starting to say, can we also recognize this as a 4-credit program instead of just an additional program? So it has job value, but can it also be a 4-credit program? And I think it might be interesting to see how this develops in the future, which is a combination of, university knowledge, but also very strong job-orientated certificates from some of the best employers in their fields. The other thing which I think is worth calling out is I spoke about guided projects, which are these, 1-2 hour projects, which are very hands-on learning, especially around any tool that you might be looking to learn on a particular software. And one of the things that we're thinking about is, can we go to industry and get them to author a guided project, which we can then bring to a university? So can we go to the top bank in, Kuala Lumpur and get them to say, here are 10 projects that we would love students to learn before they even come and interview with us for a job with us, because then the kind of relevance of the skills that they've built are very tied to what we are looking for the future. And again, to complement what's happening on campus, guided projects from employers who come to your universities to employ them could be a very strong job ready kind of a component to the learning as well. We're getting some initial very good responses to both of these, but I'd love to get any reactions if people have to these two ideas.
Raghav, go on. Sorry, Perry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in with a couple of things, because I think the observation and what I'm picking up here today, and I think it's a couple of things we need to bear in mind. One is a lot of universities have been very concerned about, how will our students go online? Well, the reality was, and as I think Raghav showed earlier on one of his slides, with the amount of students who are online, the students were already there. I gave a presentation a couple of months ago, and I looked at the amount of time students in Asia spend online. The highest are our friends in the Philippines. They spend 10 hours and 2 minutes a day. That's on average. Malaysians are a little bit behind that, about 7 hours. Japan was the worst, 3 hours and 45 minutes. So already many people around the world were online a lot more, and maybe they were online because the connectivity, particularly in the Philippines, was so bad. So they're already used to that environment and a mobile environment. I think Raghav's pointed out 70% of those 24 million students, whatever it is, were joining online because that's where it's happening. So I think the universities and our sector's got a lot to catch up with. I think the interesting thing about Coursera and what I'm hearing here is it's very much what I call, from tourism point of view, a disintermediation. We've broken up the components. Hotels.com, basically they're what they call, an online travel agency. They pick the various things, they take that to the market. And I guess this will hit us because you've got 25,000 universities around the world. Every one of them's got a business school. They're all doing the same thing. They've all got engineering schools and a whole range of other things. So the question is going to be, do we need all of those institutions doing exactly the same thing, often many times in one city? This will bring an interesting question, but it will also open up that question of collaboration and how do institutions want to collaborate, or how can they collaborate, or because they may have certain specialists or people who would be certain specialists. In the past, that was because you wrote the key textbook in an area. The written word is kind of dead in that space now. So the question will be, can you not only write the textbook, but can you deliver the lectures, the information, and a whole online learning environment that goes around it? It's interactive, thought-provoking, collaborative, etc. And I think that will be the sort of challenge going forward for that one. And, I'm seeing this in my own area. Universities, I think, will slowly crawl out and start looking at other innovations to find ways to connect. Because obviously my area has been global mobility, and, where do we go now? So I'm doing a lot of work on virtual exchange. And now we look at the opportunities, because before most universities only had maybe 10% of students going on exchange, maybe 20% on a good day. Now we can build in opportunities for 100% of students to take advantage of it because the cost shifts. So I think there are going to be huge other opportunities for that. But whether we just want big companies dominating this, and I'm sorry to come in with that. Now you could argue, well, Google dominates this, Zoom dominates that space. Are we wanting to be promoting that as universities? So I'm going to have a bit of pushback there about Raghav, because I just don't think it's all about Salesforce dominating the agenda for pushing those things out. And I think we have to be very careful going down that road.
Thank you very much. I think you said we're close for time, so I don't want to keep you too long, so I appreciate you're all busy. But I think that does raise an interesting point, and perhaps it speaks to something Raghav mentioned earlier, which is the nature of collaboration changing fundamentally. And I suppose what you're talking about is, like you say, who has the power in that? And it seems to me that from talking to all of you, it's critically important that academics and university leaders retain the freedom to do their jobs and to shape curricula, regardless of who they're partnering with, whether that is a university in another country or whether it is a private company that's offering more skills. So I think what's clear to me is that from listening to your talk today, that the data will grow around what students want, what their learning habits are, and also different patterns will emerge in terms of how curricula will change, and that may be based on international collaboration. It may be based on using new digital platforms. But it's been noted many times over the hour and a bit that we've been talking. I think it's a huge period of change. We're still quite early on in the process for that, but it seems to me like there's a definite direction of travel here, and it's very interesting to hear you all talk today. And I hope you found the discussion as interesting as I have. I'm sorry we've only scratched the surface on a couple of areas, but I think that speaks to the need to keep talking about these issues, and also keep a keen eye on what is happening in the technological space and in the policy space, but also what's happening with what all of you are doing in all of your jobs. So I'm sorry we're going to have to wrap things up there, because it feels like we could probably go on for another hour if we all had time. But I just wanted to thank everyone for taking part. So Perry, Yasmin, Ahmed, Mohammed, Fayed, Razia, and of course Raghav. Thank you all for taking part in the discussion today, and I hope you all enjoyed listening to each other talk as much as I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Maharaj.
Thank you.
Nice to meet
Thank
all of you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Thank
bye-bye.
you.
Bye.
Have a good week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.